Well, I can't really help myself. I've been taken by my own brilliance, as my ego just told me, and I was like, I should talk about this. It's 9:29 on Friday, the 27th of March. That's 9:29 a.m., and it's 2026, and I'm currently walking toward Troutdale. There is a little bit of, it's not even really drizzle. I feel an occasional drop on my legs. But by and large, looking at the clouds, I feel comfortable with the threat of rain. If it's going to rain, it's not going to be right now. This doesn't look like something that arouses any kind of fear emotional response for me. But anyway, I was just listening to Guthrie Govan. Highly recommend his Erotic Cake album. I've spoken about him before, I think back when I was walking to Amicalola. And maybe that's why I started having this thought, because I was thinking about the fact that I left from, and this isn't supposed to be navel gazing, this is just me thinking about this and finding it interesting and thinking, what does this say about the whole thing? So, I left from my parents' house in Clayton, Georgia, and decided to walk to Amicalola just because I thought it's close enough, 75 miles. If I'm going for a 2,000 mile walk, what's 75 miles more? And if my implicit reason of wanting to do this, which is tied to the overall title of Walden 11, if that is sort of my background operating system, it was the executive order to begin this walk, which was basically I believe in my life that I have found a way to have fun most of the time, right? I think that there's a underlying humorous take on most things, and you can find a way to do that so that even the minor tragedies of your own life become humorous. It's lol, of course, why wouldn't that happen? So many things happen every single day. Why wouldn't this be something counted in their lot? So yeah, with leaving Clayton, I really just I'm not a hugely romantic person, but maybe I am. I don't know. Notebook LM, what do you think? Do I have doe eyes, or deer's eyes, or how grounded am I compared to what I might think? But I like the idea, the romantic notion that a place I had been for 3 months that represented, my parents' house, safety, security, familiarity, good food, good conversations, good times. The leaving of that and simply stepping off of their property and then walking away from that was the transfer moment. That was the gear shift and switch, It was it was not unfamiliar territory at all for probably the first, most of the first day. It took a while to get out of anything I could say I recognized, And, obviously walked to Amicalola from there, But that's in a larger, scope. It was that specific instigating incident that felt like what needed to be the first chapter to Walden 11, whatever that ended up meaning again, whether it was implicit or explicit. That was my motivational factor, because again, you have Walden, right? Henry David Thoreau, classic. I've never read it, but it's about living intentionally and living in nature, right? So very specific goal in mind, and then presumably, a narrative about the whole process. I've heard a lot of people, including Bill Bryson, talk about how, what's his name? William David Thoreau. Is that his name? William? I can't remember. Alfred Arnold, whatever his name was. David Foster Wallace. I don't know. Anyway, I've heard a lot of tales that, you know, for all his mountain manning, like he lived really close to, I don't know, was it Concord, Connecticut, or somewhere that was like, you know, kind of like what I'm doing. Like I'm just like, I'm not really roughing it. I mean, I'm sleeping in the woods and I'm walking a lot, but you know, I'm going to towns as often as I possibly can. Shoot, I'm headed to one right now. You know, nothing raises my dander at this point more than the idea of having to carry more than 2 days of food at any given time. I'm just like, man, that is gonna suck. Like, I don't even like carrying 2 days of food. That makes me feel like I'm already laboring under someone's thumb. You know, it feels like I'm getting squished. Preferably, and again, this is like a little bit of the idea of like making this more like the Caminos as well. It's like, design a path that takes you through towns as often as possible. You know, like, certainly it would be good for those little towns if they could depend on quite a few extra people every year to give them a little injection. But yeah, you know, it's like, I like having a foot on both sides of the equation. And so from Walden, again, intentional living and I guess probably harmony with nature, harmony with yourself, I don't know, didn't read it. Then comes Walden 2, right? And that's written by B.F. Skinner, who is like a renowned behavioral psychologist, right? And it's like a techno-utopia, I've also never read it, where basically people live in this perfectly manicured and curated existence, and everything has been taken care of them probably even before they realize they need it done, you know? And so it's kind of like the other side of the coin. It's like Henry David Thoreau, there we go. He went in and stripped things down as much as a human can, and then B.F. Skinner went in and he built things up as much as a human can. And I'm like, well, both of those kinds of philosophies and extreme takes on things sound impossible to maintain, I guess. You know, like, if you're going to be isolated in the woods and never go into town, you're probably going to starve to death. I think he may have grown his own beans, but, you know, they're called human beings, not human beans. And then also, if you're so connected to everything, like in a digital way, that's problematic too, you know. Enter Walden 11. And so, again, this is my philosophy, which is just like, life is fun, but you have to know how to cultivate the fun that you respond to. And if you're going to try to do something sustainable, wherein like the fun that you like to have is a experiential part of your everyday life, it's more than just like a hobby, it's like a part of the fabric, then like you have to it has to kind of be an a la carte situation, you know. And this kind of goes into purism, and specifically Puritanism, and just the idea of immutable rules and ways of being, you know. Like, I think it is within our nature to have like very, very rigid ideals of what defines good and what defines bad. And historically, these had to be pretty complete systems, like, you know, a tome like the Bible or the Quran or the Bhagavad Gita. It had to explain like a full world view, you know. And in doing so, it had to explain what was good and what was bad, and how to attain one and avoid the other, so on and so forth, And I think that these were good attempts from our species to understand and try to make sense of everything, but they instilled in us, I guess in a mimetic kind of way, this like concrete belief that, your story must be the right one, because after all, it's the one you know, which we can get into all types of psychological biases like, what is it? I don't know, priming, saliency, all these kinds of things where like you're more inclined to believe evidence that supports your position because that's your position. There's not a very groundbreaking thought there, but if you think about it, it's actually pretty damning for like what people might consider to be facts, because like obviously this is like an ego thing as well, but you don't want to think of yourself as incompetent, so presumably that means that through navigating your own life, you've gotten to a point where you think that you have a pretty good idea of how things work. Even if you won't necessarily admit it, you have biases that are like unconscious. You predict. Humans are prediction engines in so much as AI is. And so we're trying to predict like what the consequences of our actions will be, And so again, having like rigid frameworks and thinking that like, whatever you glommed onto whenever you did was the way that you're supposed to measure yourself against. And then, when you have ills in your life, you return to the source material and you figure out, okay, I'm experiencing X. What does this book say that is the cause of X? And how might one use Y to resolve it? And yeah, I don't know. I just think that like going through life more reactively and reactionarily is it's a fun thing to inject in your life. Like, I don't think you can have it as a default state, just because like if you're always responding in the moment, you're probably going to make a lot of mistakes. Reflection is still very, very important, as is awareness. But when you start to feel that feeling of like stasis and stagnation and like decay, like there can be a very clear like recipe for undoing that, maybe, or at least in my life. I don't know how sustainable just jumping on the Appalachian Trail is as like a way to prime your engine, but I certainly feel like even prior to the Appalachian Trail, I was able to like insert enough novelty into my everyday life to be at least like a baseline level of satisfaction. I mean, I guess not enough, huh? I did leave my job and got rid of my apartment. I don't know. I wasn't suffering. I wasn't miserable. I was just like, this is like kind of boring. Like maybe I'd gotten to the point where I couldn't think of another way to inject something interesting into my life, and the avenues that were currently opening just seemed like not ultimately satisfying. Again, I've already said it before, but with MailChimp, it's just like, if it takes me a year to take one vertical step, like, I'm 36 years old, like, how many steps can I even go up at this point as compared to someone who might be younger and better qualified? And also, what exactly am I climbing toward? What's on the other side of that ladder, But yeah, just so slow. Life certainly can occur at a variety of different paces, and the perception of time is somewhat relative, depending, as Einstein said, time flies when you're having fun. I don't know if he said that, but he did talk about time dilation. And so, yeah, I don't know. You know what I mean? I guess that's about all I have to say right now. I didn't really have any idea what I was going to say, but I guess I'm like mildly satisfied with that. I have a baseline level of general satisfaction. But yeah, I'm going to Troutdale. There's like a little country store there. I'm really hoping they have something special, like hot coffee and breakfast sandwiches would be pretty nice, especially if I can hang out there, talk to the locals, charge up my phone, and maybe even access the internet once again. Let's see. Do I even have service? Probably not. It's been a long time without service. When you're walking and you hit a dead zone, that zone is quite dead, my dude. But yeah, after Troutdale, I will head to Atkins, which is, I think, like maybe 3 or 4 miles west of the Appalachian Trail, and then head over from Atkins back to the trail, and then kind of figure out what the rest of the day is going to look like. I'm not really entirely sure. I need to definitely do a resupply because I don't know where the next point will be for that. And it's getting pretty breezy out here, but it's not too cold. So that's nice. And I guess I'll leave it there for now. Thank you. Love you. Bye.